You should maybe have a book that I listen to.
Yes, actually.
You find lunch.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'll start these slides just for the purpose of kind of the video, but we're here to have just an introduction to Ren'Py. Have any of you heard of Ren'Py before or used it? Yes. Okay. You've heard of it. Have we heard of what a visual novel is?
Yes.
Okay, so we're familiar with the format, at least. So that is what Ren'Py was built for. That is what it's kind of at its default good for. We were talking a little bit before the workshop of like things you can do to hack or play through Ren'Py. You can really push the engine to a lot of different limits. But at some point, you're doing that because you want to push the engine and you're trying to discover that. But if you're just trying to build something that's not a visual novel, there are easier and better tools to do that that exist. So if you're playing for playing's sake, cool. If you're trying to create something that's not a visual novel, probably a different engine is the way to go. So I have the link, the bit.ly link, if we're all following along on the slides. I'll try and talk a little bit after things might need to be downloaded and stuff, but let's get started. So
Sorry, how do we get to the slide?
bit.ly. So if you type in that in, capitalization does matter for bit.ly links.
I also posted it in the Discord if you're in the Discord.
Okay. I am.
Yeah, but you can type it directly into the browser.
Yeah. Are we all, I'd also like to get an idea of programming levels, like comfort levels with programming and disciplines that we're from.
I'm a freshman taking 3 CS classes so far.
Okay.
So introduction.
Very proficient. I'm a senior computer science. I know
Yeah.
Python pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm a grad student in BME. I have, I would say, introductory proficiency into Python. I took a certificate 3 years ago, I want to say, in Python, but I'm more adept with R and MATLAB. So that's
Okay.
what we use in BME.
Okay. And how about
I'm a freshman. I'm taking Part 150, which is like a beginner's like Python class. I'm in the middle of that.
yeah, awesome. So a lot of different levels. That'll be good for an introduction. Ren'Py, let me progress again. So Ren'Py is built on Python. You can just do straight Python script within it. It does kind of have its extra kind of layer of the Ren'Py library and structure as well, which is mostly what we'll be working in today, but we'll do a little bit of Python. But mostly we're going to be working in kind of just like basic Ren'Py structure to start off with. It's built on the GamePy library, if that's familiar. So things you can do in there, you can do in Ren'Py, if you're willing to kind of dig. So we are all, I think we said we were all aware of what a visual novel is and kind of what the format is. So if I'll click on one of these just to show. I'll click on this one because it's just very basic. So this is kind of the format of games that you would create in Ren'Py. So it'll give you a run game. It's going to download the story because we're in itch.io.
Oh, it really run in a browser.
Yes. Ooh, no, I was playing it this morning.
Of course.
I was playing it this morning.
Interesting.
Part of it might be because of the nature of this game. So that might be it. So let's play this one. Now, this one is a little bit more advanced than the games that we will be playing today. But it's on there as a example of something that you can do that's not just like sprite characters talking to one another. Something that's a little bit more interactive, but it'll give an idea of kind of the basic layout of a Ren'Py game regardless. The first one in that list, same thing, but it was built specifically for like a 24-hour game jam. So I wanted to show that as like an example of something that might be created. And it had very strict rules because they were only allowed to have one background, one sprite, and like 1,000 words. So very short. and very compact.
That is very
So if you want to see an example of what you might make within that kind of compact. So this is Ren'Py. So normally it would just be like this bottom screen with text on it, but this one, like I said, is a little bit more interactive. So you can click on these pots and you can add seeds to it. And then there's like a little timer before you can kind of click and interact again. So this is advanced Ren'Py, but we're not kind of outside of the realm of the visual novel because we can go into kind of character conversations and click through kind of this character meeting or talking to with more characters. And this is kind of what more basic Ren'Py looks like. So sprite on one side, sprite on another side, and then you click through and you get access to the narrative. So that's kind of the default. This one just has that extra kind of interactivity of creating the plants. But anyway, this is a really fun game that I suggest you playing through if you are looking for fun games to just pass some time. It does have some nice catchy music to it. And yeah. And then my favorite guard, very short, very compact kind of rules. Dating Sim 389 was also made during a game jam, but it was a bit of a longer game jam than 24 hours. I think it was like a week or so. Okay, let's not do that because we're all kind of familiar with the format already. So if we've not, so have you managed to download Ren'Py?
I don't have it on this computer, but like I can just watch what it is too while I check.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be talking for a bit. So if you click on the link to download. So this is the link to download Ren'Py. I know some of us already did it at the start, but it'll take you to this site and then it will probably have this highlighted for you already. So that's what you want to download. And then you're on a PC, Mac?
Yeah.
Mac, PC.
Yeah.
MacBook. Okay. So you'll just want to follow the instructions for a MacBook as far as getting it working.
G option is, yeah. Windows, Mac, and then Linux left to right.
Yes. Yep. So it should automatically highlight it for you, hopefully, based on the machine that you have. And then if you need the specific Mac instructions, they're on the slide, just to be helpful. Okay, at this point, I'm going to exit out of here.
Is this what you're showing me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna enjoy things.
Yeah. And we're just gonna be on my desktop. Okay. So when you first launch the program, you will get this little launcher screen like this. And this is as big as the screen is. So if you're ever trying to make it bigger, it's not working. That's why, because this is as big as it gets. Okay, so you will have two default projects already in your launcher. You will have a tutorial and a project called The Question. The Question is kind of the quick start guide for getting started with Ren'Py. It walks you through an example game and how to kind of create that game. The tutorial is kind of the Ren'Py documentation summary, but in Ren'Py visual novel format. And it gives you some code that you can copy and paste into the script file. The other areas of this launcher, so this will open up your directory for the game that you have selected over here. So if I select my Making Friend project and I select this, it's going to open up my game folder for me. So I don't have to like go into my documents and try and find it itself. So that's a really nice feature of the launcher. If I want to edit my RPY files, which are my Ren'Py game files, I can select from here. My actions will largely not be dealing with in this workshop, But if you are ready to kind of launch your project, you'll just use the build distribution tool, which will compile the files as needed to make the game operable elsewhere, so other people can download and play it. So that's when you're ready to publish, that's the tool that you'll want, and it's under the actions menu. So when we're in a visual novel, there's a lot of asset management to that. So there are background images that we might want to use, and there are sprite images that we may want to use to begin with. That's kind of the starting point. So part of what I like to do is make sure that my images are kind of in place and ready to go before I start building the game. So if you go back to the slides, there's a link to a folder here. Hopefully it's shared, where you can download some images. Some are the same that I'm using, just to have some additional assets to kind of play around with, besides the default ones that Ren'Py has. So some things about images that are important to note. You'll notice the file names. Let me just go into the images itself because it'll be bigger. You'll notice the file names have spaces in between the characteristics. They are all lowercase, and the characteristics match kind of the mood and character. So that's the format that you would want to follow if you are creating your own assets, or if you're downloading them from somewhere else and they haven't followed this format, you'll just want to change them to this format. We're going to experiment with kind of how Ren'Py deals with if you've got underscores in between things. But generally, when you are working in the program, this is kind of the file format that it works with. If you've got file names that have capitalization or anything like that, it will automatically lowercase them within the program. There are ways around that we can talk about, but that's kind of the default way that it will work. So those are sprite images. I have those character sprites. I have this cat sprite as well. And I have a bunch of backgrounds. And I pulled all of these from itch.io. So if you're looking for things like during the game jam to use, that's a good place to pull them from. You can search by free or other kind of copyright free or free to use licenses. Project directory we covered, so, and how to access it. Other things in this directory that might be of interest. If you want to do a bunch of redesign of the menus and GUI interfaces, that's all in the GUI folder, so you can change all of these images to customize that fairly easily just by exchanging these images out. And then if you want to do more of a redesign, I have linked to a video in the slides that kind of walk you through where all of those assets, where all of those commands live within the larger Python library. So you can customize it a little bit more fully than just kind of swapping out these images. Audio, if you want to add audio to your game, goes into the audio folder. So that's kind of where you access the things within your game directory, and how you add things and sort of get ready to create a game. So you all might hit create new project, which is at the bottom left of the screen to create a new project. I'm going to select making friends and hit launch this project, or to play it. And we can kind of see what's in there already. And then we'll go into the script and kind of go over how you write it. When you launch, it gives you a nice little tip. So I have not changed this GUI interface at all. This is the default that it will look like. I'm going to hit start. And we'll see that I've got the background. I have changed this character name color, but that's it. Everything else is kind of the default, besides, like, obviously there's a background image and a sprite character. So this is kind of the menu. So when you get to a choice, this is the default settings of those. And we'll just play through it a little bit. And we'll say I'd rather not. And then we get an exception because I have not written this scene. So it's saying it doesn't exist, which is true. So that's fine. And then we can quit. So that's the game. And if we want to look at that, I'm going to open the script.rpy. Now, for you, since this is your first time working in Ren'Py, it's going to ask you to choose which editor you want to work in. So I'm working in VS Code because I already have VS Code on my laptop. And I already know how to use it. You might want to check out one of the other editors. The Atom editor for the longest time was like the default editor. So it has a lot of really nice built-in functions for Ren'Py already. But it's up to you, like whatever you're comfortable using. If you are going to use VS Code and you are using an instance of VS Code that you already have on your laptop, you might want to add the Ren'Py language extension, which will give you a nice little extra kind of helper commands when you are in there. So do you use VS Code or are you all in CodeLab?
Yeah, we use like CodeLab.
Okay.
We use that like Anaconda and everything like that.
Okay.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Am I supposed to be clicking VS Code or VS Code system?
VS Code system is the choice if you already have it on your computer, I believe. So if you hit VS Code, and then it will download VS Code into your machine. Okay, so while we kind of get set up with that, let me just kind of walk through what these various parts of the code are. So right off the bat, this isn't strict Python, right? This is kind of its own thing. So at the start of this file, we have some 3 lines that define our characters. So the define argument takes a kind of variable name. So we've got L, C, and N set equal to character, which lets us know we're creating a particular kind of object within a Ren'Py story. The first argument is the character name. And then the second argument is the color that we want their name to appear as, like in that text box when they're speaking. There are other settings that you can add to this. You can change the color of their name, but also the color of their actual dialogue instead as well. But this is kind of the basic use case and setting up characters. Just like Python, though, you'll want to be careful about the variables you are using. It is possible to define a character as a variable and then to use that variable elsewhere in your story, and then you will confuse your script. So just be careful that you are using distinct variable names. And you're following the general rules for creating good variable names where you're not starting with, weird characters and things like that, and you don't have spaces in them, and general best practice for variable names. This line number 10 that I have on the screen, this is not here by default. I have added this. Any guesses to what this does?
I'm gonna take a guess that it controls the speed of text is displayed on the screen.
Yeah, exactly. So if this weren't here, the text would just appear on screen and it wouldn't have that typewriter effect. And let me actually relaunch my project and start. So we'll see how it like types out the narrative when we progress. So if I minimize this, minimize that, I'm gonna comment this out for now. Yep. Control S to save real quick. Go back into my game, and a really nice shortcut, especially when you're in writing developing mode, is if I hit Shift R, it's going to reload my game with the new edits. Yep. Yep. So now when I play this, you'll see that it just has the script appear and we've lost that typewriter effect. So that's a really nice thing to just add in because I think it adds a little bit more liveliness to the game. And then you can adjust this number to be faster or slower. This is something you can also manage by character or by script line. If you have a character who like speaks really fast, that might be an interesting thing, or a character who speaks really slowly. Or maybe they get like knocked on the head and one of their lines is just like really slow for that reason. So narrative things that you can do to play around with that text to add a bit of layering to your story. Below that, we start creating a scene. So scenes always start with a label, and the first scene of your story should always be called start because that's what Ren'Py looks for. To play the game. So you'll see under here I have more scenes. So this one is labeled swamp. Below that I have one labeled cat, look cat, inside find cat, etc. So new scenes have a label, they have a start, and then they have a colon. If we want to use a background, we create a scene with the scene command, and then we give it a background image. Now this image naming convention is very different from anywhere else in programming, right? We've got spaces here, and we are not using extensions. So we're just calling the image as it is called in our file with the spacing and without any extensions. If we did want to kind of circumvent that and call images based on like a variable, but use a name that follows our own conventions, we could declare that at the start. We would just put in like an image declaration. So image equals whatever our file name is. And then we could use that basically as a variable instead. So that option does exist if you really just don't like calling images in this way. I think it's nice and handy. But sometimes it does mean you're renaming things in your folder to make things make sense. Okay, so this scene, Ruins 3, something else to pay attention to, which I forgot about because I didn't create a new story. So apologies, because you all had to go through these scenes and I didn't tell you what they were. So project name. Your project name, so whatever you want to name your project. This is what your folder will also be called. So if you're looking for your folder, your game folder, it's going to be called your project name. Your screen resolution, this is important to remember because you will need to make sure your background size, your sprites, any other assets that you're adding, as far as like if you're redesigning your GUI system, are compatible with this size, or that you are resizing things so that they are compatible. Otherwise, 1280 and 1920 are probably what you're aiming for. Select accent and background colors. That's all customizable within the game itself. This is really just like, what colors do you want to edit in? Right? What colors are fun for you while you're drafting? But that's it. So those are those choices and why they matter. Let's go back to our code. Okay, so I say that because when I first put in Ruins 3, it was only zooming in on a very particular part of the image. So I had to go back in and resize all of the images that I had downloaded so that they fit the screen in a nice way. So that's setting a scene. You can add transition effects to scenes, just like I've added this effect to the sprite. So this is my scene, this is my background. If I want to add sprites on top of that background, I use the show command. And then this whole thing is the name of that file. So sprite1 angry small, and then it's going to dissolve in. So that's how you get sprites to come in. If you want a sprite at the right and a sprite at the left, you just use at right, at left. Otherwise, they default to the center. To add in dialogue, we can use our character variable names that we've created. If you have a character that maybe is only going to show up once and you don't want to create a variable for them, it is also correct to say this. And then that is also correct. So character name followed by dialogue will also work. Yeah. If you just have like a one-off character that needs to like yell in from off screen or whatever. So you don't have to define every character. Okay, so those are the basics of creating characters, setting scenes. We'll see that this scene is Ruins 3, so it's using this image in my folder. So another thing, it ignores subfolders. Like we've not given it a path, but it has found where the image is. So we don't need to give it full paths. It will find the image as long as it's in that game folder and in that images, which is another convenient but weird thing, right? Okay, so there's that. If we go to here, we can kind of see how that's working, right? Charlie is green, like we said. When Norman comes on, Norman is purple. Charlie is at the right because we have moved Charlie to the right, all of these things. So last thing is, how do you write menus for questions? So this is how do you add interactivity? So we use the menu argument. So menu argument followed by a colon, however many questions you want. I would suggest not giving more than 3-4 options for a game at a time, followed by each question, followed by a colon, and then some kind of argument. So these both jump the player to a new scene. So this would jump them to swamp, which is this scene here, and this would jump them to cat, which is this scene here. Questions about that? No? Okay. And then you continue to write scenes.
So the name Swamp and Cat, that refers to the scenes, not like the actual like, I guess like
No.
image background, right?
Yeah, you can think of label names as like variables in and of themselves. So you're naming them this particular variable, and then you can use it elsewhere to refer to. Yeah. One thing to note with transitions, they are added to whatever is above them. So if I didn't have, and times things like at the same time. So I have 2 dissolves here because if I just had the 1 dissolve at the bottom, it would dissolve the background and the sprite in at the same time. Whereas if I want the background to dissolve in first and then the sprite, they each need their own dissolve argument. That makes sense. Other transitions that you might use are noted on the slide deck, but also in the documentation. But the popular ones are dissolve, fade, and then V punch or H punch, which kind of like punches the screen up and down or back and forth. And then we just have more menus, more labels. These are the scenes we're gonna write real quickly. And then you'll see I've added a bit of extra logic here because we're now working with variables a little bit. But we're gonna write these scenes together and then kind of look into how they work. Okay, so to summarize the story as it is now, we are playing a character called Norman, who has entered a swamp and encounters Charlie, who is looking for a cat. The cat's name is Lobster. We are asked if we want to help to look for him or not. So the scenes that we have to write are if we help to look for the cat or if we don't help to look for the cat, and then our ending scene, which has a good ending because we helped and that is good, or we didn't help and that is disappointing because you don't get to see the cat. Okay, so our last choice was this menu, which says, sure, let's look for the cat, or I'd rather not, and then we go inside instead. So we want to start building a scene to begin with under this label, which is look cat. And we have this extra bit of logic here, which is now tracking our helped variable, whether that's true or not.
You have to previously define help.
No,
Oh,
no, this is where we define that
I also create.
and create it. Yep, created and defined.
That's interesting.
Yes, yes. All right, so how do we create a scene?
How do we create a scene?
Mhm.
We say scene and then the file image, the file name.
Right, so we've got scene. Let's double check it does not get a colon. And then we use a file name. So we're looking for the cat. Presumably we are looking for the cat within the swamp. So let's use, and I haven't resized all of these. So there's that. Let's use castle. So we're going to use castle. I do not have to capitalize it, even though it is capitalized as the file, because Ren'Py is automatically going to do that for me. So we are in a castle. Oh, also just like Python, indentation matters. So everything needs to be indented underneath your label. Otherwise it will not like it. Okay, so we are, our background is going to be a castle. What sprites need to show up?
Norman, Charlie, and potentially the cat, but maybe not necessarily the cat.
Yeah, maybe we have the cat show up later when we find the cat. But so we haven't shown Norman, who is like the you character of this, but we certainly could.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, but we have another sprite that we have access to, so let's just go double check what a Norman character could be. So let's add sprite 3 happy small. So we're going to do sprite 3 happy small. I do like to at least dissolve them in. And then how do I have Norman say something?
We use his sorry, I don't remember his variable name.
Yeah, which is
Okay.
N. Yeah. Don't expect you to remember all the variable names that I have created.
Is that typical Ren'Py?
That is typical within all of the tutorials, which is why I did it here. Yeah, but you can use whatever. You can just use their names. I think what it is because you are writing these out fairly frequently, you want them to be short. Yeah, because you don't want to be writing out Norman like 500 times throughout a story when it's much easier to just say N.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's have Norman calling for the cat, and then let's have Charlie show up. So show sprite 1. Now, I want to test this because I haven't tested it yet. I said I would. This file name that has the underscore in it, right? Which might be a more typical way of file names being represented. So let's try and use that here. Let's try without it and just see if it takes it out for us. And then we will do with fade just to see what a fade looks like. And then we'll have Charlie say, and it's getting dark, right? Because we need to give her a reason to be a little sadder than she has been. Yeah. Okay, so that's look cat for now. Let's control S this so we save it. Let's go to our game. Let's shift R. So it reloads. Okay, so this is our choice, and we want to say sure because that's the part of the story that we're currently writing, and we want to test it.
Cool.
Exception. Okay, so what is wrong?
Line 93, help is not defined.
Oh, because it probably needs us to play through.
Like if you get to that menu or that.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's test that. Hypothesis just by playing through real quick. This choice does not matter. No. So that's which.
Oh, it's not. Where did you define help?
So you define, it'll define it in.
It should,
define it
so this should define and
create.
create.
With a $sign.
And help finish.
And it's not like I'm trying to set it to,
String is the first time it's been used.
I think so. Not had. Okay, well, let's go to our documentation. Keep flashing my email. I'm gonna have to take that out of the recording. Yeah. So let's see. Let's just do a quick control F. Hopefully this does the whole thing. We don't necessarily need configuration variables. We just need basic. Oh, is it? So I don't think that's it. It might be it, but that'd be weird if it was it. Because yeah, okay. So last time I was teaching Twine. Twine uses is as the equals, and Python does not do that.
R is weird also. They use
So-
uses less than equal to and hyphen as equal. Don't
Right.
see why.
Yeah, so that's why, because I was using the incorrect syntax. So we've got it set to equal now, so hopefully we're good to go. So we've got Norman on the screen, with our text. This is our this, so it doesn't work, right? Because our file name is incorrectly created, yeah.
So use a default sprite instead.
Yep, so it goes to the default sprite with kind of a description of it. So, I mean, that's easy enough to fix. We go into our folder and we just rename this. So, cool. And then we should be able to click in and then shift R. And there we go. But now they're on top of each other because we haven't defined the area of the screen that they should be. So if we go back to our script and where we have our characters, it's okay to have Norman like appear in the center at first, right? But then maybe when Charlie pops on, we'll put Charlie at right because that's where Charlie has been. And then we'll show, I'm actually not sure how this will do it. So we'll do that. So show sprite 3, happy, small. Norman doesn't have a good emotion for this point, which is also part of what planning ahead would be for your story, so you know what emotions your assets need to have. Okay, so let's control S this. Let's go back to our game. Let's go back. Sure. Yeah. So now Charlie's to the left, or Charlie's to the right, Norman's to the left. It'd be nice if we knew Charlie was going to be our left character. We could go in, edit the sprite so that it is facing left. In like Photoshop or wherever, just reverse the image. But now we have a scene, and that's pretty easy to put together. If we wanted to find the cat, which is kind of our reward for helping, let's have Norman say, wait, what is that sound? And then we can have a show what is the cat's file information. Okay, think we need to use the bigger images, but I'm not sure. So for now, we'll do buff myth and just see what that gives us, just for testing. Show Fuff Myth we'll do with V-Punch just to get a bit of action in here. And then we're actually gonna do Show Fuff Myth at right, which I believe will replace Charlie, but we'll see. And then we'll do L for lobster, and then we'll just do a cat sound. Okay, again, small edits, and then you test them, right? Just like when you're doing real programming. Not that this isn't real. So we'll go through here. Sure. So there's Norman. There's Charlie. Ah, and there's Lobster. So we'd want Charlie to go away at that point. So we can just have Lobster there. So let's hide sprite 1, sad, small. So control save. Back to here. Shift R.
Yeah.
There we go. There's our cat.
Lobster filter.
Yeah. Yeah, well.
She fell out, Lobs fell out of a tree and collapsed on top of
Yeah.
Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you'll see like even this background, we need to resize that. So lots of little things that could be edited and changed, but that's like, that's it. Like that's the whole basic process. A lot of it is doing small edits and then seeing how the sprites interact with each other in the scene. And when you might want to change their emotions, and things like that.
Regarding whenever you call a scene or a character, does capitalization matter?
No. Well, yes.
So then
Within the script, capitalization matters. So if you call a screen capital I inside, you want to use capital I inside later.
Mhm.
Yeah.
so each uppercase and lowercase letters are considered separate.
Yeah. So if I had a character that's uppercase C and I had a character that's lowercase c, those are two separate.
Okay.
Yeah, those are going to be read as two separate things.
Gotcha.
We've got half an hour, so I figure that's good on playtime. You've got the question, which is already set up as like a default kind of sandbox if you want to use that. I can, now that we've played around in this file, download it and upload it into the drive folder. So if you want to download it, you would just need to replace, copy and paste it into your script. And then you can mess around with this file instead if you want to. So let me do that. I'm going to stop the recording at this point.